Hey guys, it's Lumen02. Haven't done a video in a long time and wanted to do one to capture 3 games in the 100-card singleton format with 3 separate decks against 3 separate decks, playing against player Sung. So this first deck we're playing Esper Control versus what I believe is Sultai Midrange. So first hand's unkeepable. This hand is decent enough, so it has Mana Drain and Enlightened Tutor. Enlightened Tutor can get Moat depending on what I'm playing against. When I see blue mana, I tend to think probably mid-range. Blue-green mana, I tend to think probably mid-range. Probably mixed with either black or red, but most likely knowing Sung's playstyle, I assume she's probably on Bug. So the Enlightened Tutor is likely at some point in time to get a search for his Kanta here. So we go ahead and keep our 6-card hand. She plays on a Lonely Sandbar, which makes me think she's probably on a Life from the Loam deck, which is actually not a great matchup for this deck. We could go for it here, but if she has, the Force Spike or the spell Pierce, then we're kind of in trouble, or a Spell Snare even. So I put my tapped land here. My plan is now to kind of wait until she's forced to cast something, and then I will be able to Mana Drain it and cast both Mystical Teachings and Search for his Kanta on my turn. So, we get to play this cat and mouse game. She eventually casts a threat. I do go ahead and counterspell this, kind of hoping that I'm able to draw the counter magic out of her hand here. She doesn't go for it. I don't have a Wrath, so I really don't want that thing to sit on the board and just get size huge and beat me. But, honestly, in retrospect, it was probably more correct to allow it to resolve here and then just find another answer to it. So I do go for a Logic Knot here. I don't play around Daze, although I could have. So I don't think she has Daze. If she does, I'm not really upset with her going over on mana. Now, this is the riskiest turn, I think, in this whole game that I took. So go ahead and go on a quick pause here. So the risk I run here by making this line of plays, and she plays it correctly by counterspelling on my turn and forcing me to protect it, is that if she has a Planeswalker threat, I'm kind of in some trouble. Creatures are not really that big of an issue because I have Mystical Teachings, but with the Enlightened Tutor out of my deck, Mystical Teachings cannot find me a card, in this case Enlightened Tutor, that can find me an enchantment which is able to deal with her Planeswalker threats. So, outside of having Enlightened Tutor in my deck, it's going to be very difficult to find an answer. Now, another way I could deal with Planeswalker threat is by Mystical Teachings for Mystical Tutor to find in the same, on her end step, Council's Judgment. But that's extremely slow and very mana intensive. So when she does the double tap there, I'm pretty sure that she's on 2 Planeswalkers in hand. I think that she's probably on, a Jace the Mind Sculptor and a Garruk Wildspeaker. And the reason I think that is because she's, I think, going through the deliberate decision-making process of, hey, do I cast the Garruk or do I cast the Jace the Mind Sculptor? If I have an answer to the Planeswalker, it's more catastrophic. It's more catastrophic if I get the Jace than if I get the Garruk. And Garruk in and of itself is a clock. It's a built-in clock. One, it opens up Lumbering Falls, it makes threats, and it forces me to Wrath, which ties up my mana, which means that on a later turn, she's likely going to be able to resolve her Jace. So I'm thinking that's what she's thinking at this point in time, and I think that's probably the correct play. Although, unbeknownst to her, it probably would have actually been stronger just to play the Jace, because I didn't have the answer to it in hand. But now I do know something about her hand, and I believe something about her hand, which I believe that it does have 2 Planeswalkers in it. As you'll find out, this game goes on for quite some time, but the Garruk ends up being the death of us. So the reason I say these matchups tend to be bad, because if they do land one threat, it tends to, because they also have counter magic, if they land one threat, they essentially assume an aggro control role, whereas we're forced to be the control because that's what our deck does. It doesn't really have, it has some of the best large threats, but it only has a few of them. So if we have a hand like this, where it's a little more difficult to find threats, then, we could just lose the game. So I'm going to go for a Mystic Confluence here. The other line that I could go for is Mystical Teachings for Mystical Tutor to find Entreat the Angels, but I kind of want to get my Search for his Kanta online here, so I'm being a little greedy. Plus, I also think it's very likely that on 5 cards she has some form of interaction, i.e. counter magic. This gets Spell Pierce, and it's like, oh, okay, I kind of assumed that was going to happen. But that card's not getting any more mana efficient, so I think it's worth throwing out there on her end step to try to see if we can get her to interact, just get it out of her hand. 1-for-1 exchange. So we get hit for 6 here, so starting to take a beating, so we do need to find a way to deal with this Garrick and with the board. So I do go for Mystical Teachings here. I'm kind of boxed into a position where I need a Mystical Tutor for Terminus. I don't do it on her end step because I want to be able to protect it. We see the Terminus, flip the Search for Azcanta, which allows us to leave up Dismiss, as well as cast the Terminus. We were right in thinking this way because she does have the Cryptic Command, which would have just killed us on the spot here. So we're able to dismiss that, find a Detention Sphere to answer the Garruk. But as we see here, she got what she wanted. She forced us to tap out and place her secondary Planeswalker, which is now kind of just locking us out of the game. She has an additional threat, which I can't really deal with and is going to eventually kill me. The Jace is just too many cards, so I have to get rid of it and hope that she basically just activates her man land. I'm able to search for Azcanta, find a way to deal with the Garrick, and then a way to deal with the board. The clock is really fast on me here. So I believe she does cast something relevant, and Grim Flayer, well, it is not great in many matchups. It's extremely good in this matchup because it's a card that you just have to kill because it'll eventually draw her into just too much gas. We get all our mana. I go ahead and search for Azcanta first with my additional colorless mana. I just go for Swords to Plowshares. Unfortunately, I think I have to here because we're at a point in the game where that card is going to kill us, and the Garruk is pumping up. So we take our 6 and have to like it down to 3. We have tutored for the Entreat the Angels with the Brainstormed personal tutor, and I'm going to try to play around Miscalc here. If she has Mana Leak, we lose. If she has a counterspell, we just lose. But as it turns out, what she has is a more active card, which is just Toxic Deluge, which means we lose regardless because she's able to tap out for Lumbering Falls and do the last lethal 3 damage to us. So we lose that game. I think what it comes down to is we could have played differently on the turn that we tapped out. For on our turn to resolve the search for Azcanta. We could have just left up the Mystical Teachings and played the longer game, and I think we would have been better off had we done that. So I don't think that game was unwinnable. I think it was very winnable. This one, I actually think we probably were favored to win, but as you'll see, unfortunately, we're unable to lock it up but we do play a long game here. It's actually a pretty good one. So this card is a pain in the butt. Like I said, if she's able to get it under counter magic, which she does here, then I'm going to have a tough time dealing with it. Because it's just going to give her more and more gas, or lands if she needs them, but she doesn't really need a lot of lands to probably beat us. She just needs efficient spells and efficient protection to those spells she's casting. Now, we kind of have everything in this hand we need to win. We have some interaction. We have the personal tutor to find either the Terminus or our win con. At this point, I'm considering just utilizing the personal tutor, though, to find the Terminus here and say, hey, go ahead and do 7 damage to us. We'll take the damage, and then we're going to clear your board. Or force you to play a Planeswalker into a no negate. It's possible I want to take a more active line here. Actually, I'm trying to consider. I think I got Entreat here, I think. No, I got Terminus. Okay, I did get Terminus. We do cast both cards this game, though. We cast both Terminus and Entreat. I do go ahead and negate this because I'm forced to. The Prohibit was a nice pickup because I'm able to get rid of the Spell Snare and essentially get rid of her board. I believe she goes for an attack here she cast out a spell. So she actually does cast a spell this turn as opposed to attacking with the Creeping Tar Pit to try to tempo us out. Fulminator Mage is not an issue. It's not a bad card against this deck, but with the Crucible of Worlds in hand is pretty bad. So we do draw to the Mystical Tutor, and are able to find our Entreat the Angels. This typically would be a win. She's stuck on 1 mana. I do think she makes a slight misplay here. I think she wanted to utilize the Fulminator Mage on her turn to blow up my Celestial Colonnade to force me to have 1 less land in play for this. So I'm given this blessing. And I probably also should have assumed that she did not have Spell Snare when she didn't do that. Because if she does that, it's a definite tell that she has Spell Snare, or she's just trying to limit my mana. So I cast less. I do play around the Spell Snare regardless there. And we get Toxic Deluge. It's a very good card for her to have. It's unfortunately dealt with that card very well both times. We're able to resolve a Batterskull here, which is pretty strong against opponent on 2 cards. Us with a fetch land in hand and a Crucible of Worlds on the board. She has Thrun, which is fine, but see, the problem with... so my thinking is, like, Thrun's fine. Eventually I'll be able to deal with it with a Wrath. I have a Batter Skull, she does. She'll gain more life than I will, but I'm essentially more alive to draw, basically fetching a land from my library every turn with Crucible of Worlds, and I'll be gaining life as well. I don't really mind until she's able to equip the Batter Skull to the Creeping Tar Pit, which is just an ungodly amount of mana. I believe that's like something like 9 mana to do, so it's not likely she'll be doing that anytime soon. And I'm fine just, trading my Germ token every turn for the Thrun. I'll gain 4, she'll gain 8, but it's not really that relevant for what I'm doing, because eventually I'll be able to just gain control of the game. And, my deck has inevitability, whereas I think hers is more temporal in its ability to win. It obviously is a strong deck, but it's more tempo-y, and has to seek windows in which it wins, as opposed to just, achieving utter and complete control over the game state. So here we just continue to run the plan back of the Skull. Draw Brainstorm, which is very good, especially with a recursive fetch land. Able to get rid of the land and continue to fetch out our basics, because we are running at this point an aborted matchup back to basics, which is obviously pretty strong. It's possible here, there's other lines to this game, it's possible here I just want to take the hit and cast the Mystical Teachings for back to basics, or I'm sorry, not for back to basics, for Enlightened Tutor into back to basics. So I could have misplayed that. That was certainly an option. We do get into a fight there. Luckily, I did play properly and go to my second main phase to mana drain whatever counter magic she may have. And here we draw the Sphinx's Revelation, which is what I ended up going for. Or is what I would have ended up going for with the Mystical Teachings. So Mystical Teachings is actually a lot more interesting now, because one of the cards I could have gone for was Sphinx's Rev, and now I have it in hand. Although, as you'll see, this game eventually, I want to choke her out of cards, just continue to draw card advantage out of her. But unfortunately, we epically miss with Sphinx's Rev on a significant amount of mana. So here I actually go to cast out the Mystical Teachings, because I figure it'll likely fetch counter magic out, or this will. I go ahead and cast this, looking for ideally a Wrath effect. But if this gets countered, I'm actually okay with that, because it means that her hand is clear at that point. I actually don't hit one, but I figure Jace the Mind Sculptor and Cryptic Command are good enough to buy me the time to get the Sphinx's Rev off. Plus, I know at this point, if she has counter magic, she counters the Delve card. So she gets rid of my flashback Mystical Teachings, and goes for an all-in attack here. I do Cryptic Command her cards. So this is what we draw, a bunch of nonsense. I do think I actually misplay here, probably too much coffee today, I wasn't focused. This deck requires a significant amount of thinking. What I probably should have done is just cast the Snapcaster, recast or targeted... Oh, correction, I couldn't have, that's why I didn't do it. I'm looking at this now and I'm thinking Snapcaster DT, or Dig Through Time is the right play here. I had kind of banked on drawing... Okay, well, Moto forgot what happened here. We replay the Batter Skull, have 1 mana up. She casts an Abrupt Decay, kills the Germ token. For jokes, I cast the Spell Snare on it, and then I lose the game to a lethal attack on the following turn. Got fairly unlucky. We essentially have 6 or 7 Wraths in this deck, one of which is currently exiled, the Terminus. We got pretty unlucky not to find a way to either find it or forestall her. And the Deathrite Shaman actually makes Snapcaster a lot worse, because she's left it up properly. And we cannot cast the Dig Through Time, or on her turn, recast the Cryptic Command to stop her. So we lose here. Moto obviously misremembered the game, but that is how it ended. So the next game we play against player Sung. is a game where we're playing, I believe, our 4-color blood deck. So 4-color blood is the quintessential mid-range 4-color deck, non-blue, and it appears that she is playing either Azorius or Esper. I put her on Esper because I think she likes to play good decks, and typically speaking, Esper is just slightly better than Azorius. Outside of if you want to play like Back to Basics in your deck, but it's generally going to be a one-off card. So we see that, I think, all right, control. She's on control. So this hand is actually epically well set up against control. The game plan is this. I'm going to run on Bob on turn 2 and probably get it countered. And then I have Cool against command to return it. And if she taps down for anything on 3, then I'm going to be able to resolve the Bitter Blossom, which will probably just beat her all on its own unless she has like an O-ring effect or something like that. So I just leave with a tapped land, say, all right, go, you're control, you're probably not going to do anything. Draw extremely well. This Thoughtseize is extremely crucial here because it's going to allow me to protect my turn 3 Bitter Blossom. So we throw the Bob out there and expect, hey, go ahead and counter it. She goes ahead and spell snares it. Okay, I think in my head, it's fine. That's kind of what I expected to have happen there. She preordains, then plays Brainstorm, and I'm thinking in my head, all right, you're on a mana light hand, and you're trying, and hopefully you got locked. She did not get Brainstorm locked because she found the Temple and then scryed to the bottom. As it turns out, we see her hand this turn, she wasn't locked regardless, but from how she played that, it made me think that she probably was locked. I get rid of the Demonic Tutor because Enlightened Tutor is going to be forced to find an O-ring effect this turn, which means she'll be tapped down again, and I'll be able to resolve my Garruk. So we force her hand by playing that way because I know that's what she'll have to go for. Plus it's card disadvantage. She has a Wrath of God in hand. Day of Judgment in hand, which does not scare me that much. But at this point, I'm able to play on the Tidehollow Sculler, which I draw, and say, all right, play whatever you draw because at this point you're hellbent and going off the top. I draw extremely well, and for those of you that are not familiar with Saskia, let me pull it up right fast, because it's not a common card. It's not really played any format at all, but the card is epically good in this format if you're playing 4-color blood. Saskia basically gives everything double strike, so she was a 20 life. Garruk's ultimate plus this thing was just, pretty massive top deck, so we kill her outright from 20 down to -2, because Saskia, for lack of better terms, if you're not blocking, says it gives everything double strike, but actually it stacks damage, so it does it does whatever damage you did again for each source from creature sources. So the pup effect on Garruk, making 11 power on the board, does 22 damage in one fell swoop and just kills her. We do know some more information though. The Helm of Obedience is in her deck, which means she likely is playing Rest in Peace, a Riptide deck, or a Helm Rip deck. So, game 2, hand's fine, has some mana acceleration, has some decent dorks. Kasali's not bad in this matchup because it's generally content to deal with stuff like moats. What it doesn't deal with is like humility, but the card is pretty good. We do get spell snared here, which is fine because, at the end of the day, I just kind of want to 1-for-1 her until she eventually runs out of answers for my cards. I could try to play around Miscalc here, but I decide not to because I'd rather not play the Temple Garden out. I'd rather play the uncounterable threat, Raging Ravine. I see she does not hit her white mana, which means she's likely to be in a lot of trouble in this matchup unless she has like a Fatal Push or a Kill spell. So Raging Ravine is kind of like my all-in win con. The only fear I have to have in this matchup is that she has Back to Basics. So I do play the Temple Garden out untapped because I want to have that white or green source untapped. Just in case she does play it without counter magic backup, I can use Dramoka's command to actually destroy that effect. And then if I wanted to, put a +1/+1 counter on my birds and attack with that thing as well as my Raging Ravine. So my plan right now is not to play anything out, just continue to beat her face in with Raging Ravine. And just say, hey, answer this thing or die to it, and then continue to play spells. So I draw pretty well here. I draw Duress, and I'm like, all right, let's see what's going on. I figure it's all counter magic. It is. And then one, Wrath of God, which she can't cast. Now, I do think she slightly misplayed here. She probably should have Mystical Tutored for Demonic Tutor for Wasteland or Fatal Push. So she could have killed my land, and, it would have tapped her pretty low, but she still would have had counter magic available. given at this point, Lightning Bolt is getting pretty close to lethal, and I could play the Llanowar Elves out and just, start attacking with that, and it's, almost anything's a must counter at that point. But I do think she wanted to cast the Mystical Tutor for Demonic Tutor to get the Wasteland. Keep in mind, guys, I know if you guys watch my videos on a regular basis or you're a 100-card singleton player, Demonic Tutor's banned. I think she's playing German Highlander variant of the deck, which is fine by me because, frankly, I think Demonic Tutor should be in the format. I don't think it's overpowered. I think it's fair and fine. I think, where you tend to see it doesn't shine is when you're using it, to find something that you need right now. The card is, a great top deck in the late game, but in the early to mid game, it is mana intensive. It tends to restrict what you're able to get in decks that are playing the control route, even the combo route. Because if you put a fast clock on someone, it can limit their ability to find the correct answer in the time frame required. And Demonic Tutor does not help with that. So we win that series or that set 2-0. The last game we play is with the deck that I just recently built, and it's funny. I've had a lot of builds of it, but I've never been really happy with any. I think this is the one I'm happiest with. So I'm playing Jeskai Tempo. So Jeskai Aggro Control, I think, would be the more apt name. This has no combos in it. It's not playing Kiki Jiki or Splinter Twin or anything like that. This is just a pure Jeskai deck. Very interactive. Has powerful cards, but no crazy combos. This hand's worth keeping, even though it doesn't have red mana and can't cast most of its spells, because it has Metal Misstep 1, and it has Wasteland. And it has Stoneforge Mystic. So I have threat, immediate answer to stop answer to my threat, and a Wasteland to forestall development, and, I can do a lot of damage. I can do 5 damage a turn. I do go ahead and get rid of her black mana. I assume she's on 5-color aggro with her opening lands, but then when I see her cast Cathartic Reunion, I'm like, all right, we're playing against Reanimator here. We have to destroy her black source so that she stays off mana for casting reanimation effects. And she does not have any good creatures in her graveyard, which is very good for us. So she kept a more speculative hand, and Wasteland plus, her top decks or variants have not treated her well. And we have her on a very fast clock, essentially a 4-turn clock. We draw red mana much quicker. I do tap out here because, other than safeguarding the Batterskull, I really can't cast anything except for Metal Misstep, which is already castable without mana. So I figure the Glenalandra is actually more relevant to cast here as opposed to feigning counter magic I do not have. And by the following turn, I'll just have utter inevitability because Reanimator's probably not going to beat a Glenalandra Archmage with an untap and, a 2-turn clock. So that is that game right there. And then we go to game 2, which is a little more interesting. I think she makes a significant misplay, but it's possibly because it was late on her end and was managed. That first hand's unkeepable. It has 1 mana source and a bunch of uncastable spells. Jace Vryn's Prodigy goes to the bottom. We keep this 6-er, though, on 1 land, albeit. So, pretty greedy keep, but I think this is defendable on the draw. So, we're very happy to hit our secondary land. Of note, comes into play untapped. Now we have Negate plus Prohibit and the Red Elemental Blast up. Obviously, white cards are not good draws right now. My opponent also misses on their turn as far as land goes, and or they're trying to discard. I do discard here, and I discard the Venser, and I do deliberately do it for 2 reasons. 1, it's a very mana-intensive spell, and 2, if she casts Exhume, which is a card that's likely in her deck, then it will tend to beat whatever she's doing, unless it's something that has Shroud or Hexproof. I think the worst for us would be what is it, Imperium Archangel or something like that. I do prohibit this. She has a secondary one, which in this case is Exhume. I kind of chuckle, and I feel bad because I don't think she noticed this interaction. I know she knows how it works, but I don't think she noticed that card was in my graveyard. But we bounce the Iona back to her hand, which is kind of essentially undoing work of the discard effect. I do counter the Impulse because that card is actually dangerous here, and it's something I can counter. At this point, I'm kind of have a glut of 3s in my hand. I do opt to cast the Vendilion Click to take a look. Her hand is basically 1 Reanimation effect, no way to discard, and 1 Show and Tell. She has a Consecrated Sphinx in the Iona in hand, which we now know about. So I get rid of the Show and Tell, which leaves her with... she had 1 Thirst for Knowledge, which is a 3 mana way to discard. But I figure that if she's casting that, it's very mana intensive. Now, if I'd known she was drawing into Buried Alive, I probably wouldn't have cast the Jace there, but I think it makes sense to make the most mana efficient play and still leave up Negate. So we can get Jace online to fuel our Treasure Cruise. She casts this turn, leaving up the Spell Queller. drawn to a bunch of cards, but I'm going to leave up 3 mana, either to play the Spell Queller or to play the evasive action. I do think I misplay this turn because she does have 1 card in hand that I do not know about at this point in time. So I think what I should have done as opposed to casting the Spell Queller here is cast evasive action to play around Daze. Although if she dazes here, it's not the end of the world, because if she names white, then, I can't path to exile. If she doesn't name white, then I can. However, she's in a position where, she can't really attack, because if she does, then I can kill her on the crackback. So even if this does get dazed and she gets the Iona, and let's say names white, then I play a Delver of Secrets, leave up evasive action plus a Braid, make her Iona attack as a 5/7, and then, and really it's not even great for her because eventually I'm going to be using the Jace to recast stuff. I have counter magic to protect against the Sphinx, Consecrated Sphinx she has in hand that we know about. And the Delver itself, plus these 2 threats, once the Delver flips, is going to be lethal. Regardless if she blocks or not. So I think even if she did have days, I think you could call this a misplay. But either way, I think we were in such a strong position that it was going to be very difficult to lose this one. Although I will say, I think this is a bad matchup for Reanimator. I think Control is probably a favored matchup against Reanimator as well, but Aggro Control probably more so because we combine both a quick clock plus very pointed interaction to include removal and counter magic that is generally very efficient, close to being as efficient as the spell she's casting to get back, very inefficient cards, but cards that end the game like Iona. So I hope you guys enjoyed this 100-card singleton showcase of matches. Played some interesting decks, played against some interesting decks, and played some pretty solid games. I think, my play this match I think was pretty tight. I think the Control match I played in the beginning was a little loose. I think we probably could have played a little tighter in that one. But, things happen. It's been a long week, and sometimes you play fast and loose. So I hope you guys enjoyed this very short series. And if this is a format that interests you and this is your first time watching my videos, feel free to leave me a message on Skype or hit me up at Loman02 on MTGO. And ask me more about the format. Very fun one. I think it's probably, it's extremely skill intensive. And if you are a builder or a brewer, the format itself has a lot to offer to you. So take care now and enjoy, guys.